BIDI. Part 2. July 22, 2021. Well, BIDI is back with you. And we're going to continue our advance into the real. And I am listening. Elisa, in the absolute, we realize that there is nobody. You feel good, you know that what you're experiencing is the truth, but nothing is happening. So, what is the point of staying there, unless there is something else in this real? What happens concerns the consciousness. The one who lives the absolute, in fact, notices that nothing happens, and especially wishes that nothing happens. He who lives the real, the pure Brahman, the absolute, expects nothing, hopes for nothing, and expects nothing from nothing. He is at home. He has put an end to the swindle of what passes, and is no longer subject to any expectations whatsoever. So, there's no desire for any manifestation whatsoever, as for any consciousness whatsoever. And it will always be the consciousness waiting for something to happen. And it will always be the consciousness waiting to come out of nothing. And the return to the truth, to the eternal I that has always been there and that has never moved, is the eternal felicity, beyond time. So, the question that is asked is evidently one of consciousness itself. In living the real, there's no trace of the universe. There is strictly nothing. This nothingness contains the all and that is enough for itself since, evidently, there's neither time nor space nor dimension. Only the one who has experienced this has really put an end to the swindle of consciousness, to the perversion of consciousness, and this question is therefore born of consciousness. Consciousness cannot know the absolute. Consciousness can only dream of a consciousness. Consciousness is the agent of the creation of the dream. And consciousness is the origin of the destruction of creation. It consumes itself through the experience of what passes in the illusion of space and dimensions. In felicity, there's nothing to expect, nothing to hope for. It is the ultimate abode which is the first abode. It is the junction of the Alpha and the Omega, the resolution of all questions. There's nothing expected, indeed there is nothing happening, and that is precisely what peace and the great silence is. There's therefore nothing to fear, nothing to expect, nothing to see, and nothing to experience. And that is what we are. We're prior to consciousness, I repeat, prior to the light, prior to any manifestation. And I guarantee you that the one who finds this through the character here on this earth, does not expect anything from his consciousness, does not reject anything from the theater, because he has pressed the end button for himself. He is not fooled by the game of consciousness. He is not fooled by the dream. He has refuted everything that was illusory. He refuses nothing and accepts everything. There's his felicity. There's the jnani. There's the one who is only ignorance. He knows himself as source and origin. He recognizes himself in the whole dream. As I said in my incarnation, the only difference between you and me is that I know that I am the whole. I know that I am love. I know that I am consciousness. And that this body will fade away, in fact it has faded away. And as I said, I will always be there, from the initial moment to the final moment that you're about to live. As was asked in the last question of the first part. Another question. Brother, I want to give a testimony. We're listening. Wait, we have to translate. Brother. So, a testimony. 25 years ago now, I was meditating in discipline every morning, with music, with gongs, and this is where it's going to be funny, and I went through a form of tunnel and I lived a complete life, from a child to an old man. And the second gong brought me back into this body and the time that passed was only 2 seconds. I understood that time and space had no meaning, no materiality in the absolute. So, I still went to work and people were saying hello to me and I didn't know what to say. I had to write my name and I didn't know. Brother. And so, I had to go through my pockets to find a card, laughter, with my name on it. What I mean is, I was in bliss, but that means beyond form, we exist. 10 years later, and I witnessed this with you, BIDI, the character had to give up his projections and welcome the disappearance of my world. Work, family, health, etc. But at that moment, when one accepts to be nothing, when one accepts to pass our attraction for the form, and when one crosses a light, one really arrives in this absolute, this state where we are the all, and it is accessible to all. Brother, you just have to cross your fears and let go of the taste for play, the attraction to play for the form, and the bliss liberates and is the greatest reward. I thank you. And what you have experienced goes back many years. I can only add that, today, it is even easier, and that only the identification with the consciousness prevents you from living it, with any consciousness, whether it is the consciousness of the character, the consciousness of the world, and even the consciousness of the self. The self is the ultimate swindle. It is the ultimate trap, but also, what one could say, the ultimate step. And indeed, when you live the nothing, you don't need, in quotes, to go through the hole. You accept your incarnation in the dream. Everything becomes simpler. Everything is crossed, as you say, with ease, because everything belongs to the dream. You hold on to nothing, so everything is given to you. Without demand or expectation, you are spontaneously in service in its noblest sense, and which is not a service to yourself or to the self, but you are in service to life. You are no longer dependent on any dream, on any projection, and you are naturally in the present time, in time zero. You know that it is a dream. You do not run away from the dream. But today once again, the moment has arrived for the end of the creation myth. And this phenomenon is collective. It concerns all forms, all worlds and all dimensions. Everything that concerns consciousness has been seen and traveled. All the paths of the possible and the impossible have been experienced. You don't need to remember it, because literally the memory of the real consumes and consumes all forms and all particulars of consciousness. And this is a joy that cannot be compared to anything known or experienced, because you clearly understand that you have been the whole of the experiences, and that the whole of the experiences that have happened, that are happening and will happen, have nothing to do with the real. This is the natural state. You are at the interface of this natural state, at the extinction of the ultimate presence or the abode of supreme peace, the famous white paradise, and the total discovery of the real. This is experienced now, in the space of the chaos of the societal scene as in the chaos of the elements. But you are not this chaos. You have never appeared. And you will never disappear. At that point you see that you don't need consciousness, you don't need any stage, you don't need any dimension, you don't need a master, let alone angels and archangels, and so you're the integral sovereign. This is what you have to affirm, which is perhaps still unknown to you, but which during this frank and sincere affirmation, will be immediately known to you. It is the ultimate act of acceptance, the ultimate act of acceptance and revelation of the real. And you will notice at that moment that the universes have appeared, that they disappear without reason, and that all this was only a dream. There cannot be the slightest reluctance, the slightest questioning. It is total bliss. You remain quiet. You do not claim anything. You don't project anything, because you know very well that it is precisely what you stop doing that makes the solution. This is the moment you press the button. And it is now, out of time, and yet on this time. It is the merger of illusion and reality. That ultimate friction and opposition that creates complementarity and makes you remember the eternal bliss that you're outside of consciousness as well as any world. I thank you for this testimony, which indeed shows that it has always been there, and that it has not prevented you from living the dream, and that you have never been fooled by it. This is the state of fluidity, the state of resilience, the state of humility and simplicity. Truth is humble and simple. Consciousness, the treacherous one. Elisa, I don't understand this word. Which is the liar, will take you into all kinds of experiences, will always take you into all kinds of dreams and illusions. but the consciousness cannot maintain itself in front of the real, in front of the eternal I. Silence. Other testimony or questioning. Silence. Brother, I have a question. So, it is a question. The consciousnesses that today play the final scene and close the illusion, do they have a link? How? Brother, do they have a link with the consciousnesses that opened the experience in the beginning? The initial consciousness, the very first manifestation, is nothing but the last manifestation. The primordial chaos, after its organization according to time, space and dimension, leads in an illusory way to the final chaos. The final moment of consciousness is only the memory of its initial moment. This has been called the Ouroboros, the snake that bites its tail, the cycles of samsara or illusion. And also, the Alpha which joins the Omega, which demonstrates and proves to you, by the memory of this initial moment, that the totality of the dream appeared and disappeared without any reason. And that absolutely everything was written and deployed in this initial and final state, where everything is in relation by the intelligence of light, by the resonance of love, having allowed the exploitation and the exploration in the same instant of the zero instant, of the totality of the planes and dimensions and of the one consciousness, in its innumerable fragments, all carriers of the same unity of consciousness. There's only one consciousness. We're really and concretely the ones and all the others, really the ones and the others, and this allows us to understand and to conclude, by living it, that we have never moved and that there has never been anyone, one person, and nobody. It is a great joy, the great silence of the evidence, the great peace, the love and the wisdom of the one who lives the real and who has no more reason to be within any dream that, indeed as I said, consumes and consumes all the dreams of creation. Your space and your time, allowing you to see that there's neither space nor time. And their peace is eternal, there's no more question, there's no more possibility to be wrong, there's no more desire of consciousness, no more desire of forms, worlds or dimensions. The eternal I is found, you can only recognize yourself, in the total ignorance of all knowledge and all lived experience. This is the end, which is nothing more than the beginning of what has never begun and never ended. And that is of no interest at all. Silence. Alisa, I have a question from the people in the chat, in the WhatsApp I mean. Tell us about the white paradise, even if it is also part of the game, that is, it is not real. It's very simple, the white paradise is a light of the source. It is the place of the oath and the promise, it is the place of the first appearance, apparent, and of the last disappearance, apparent. It is white, the color of purity, the color prior to all forms and all consciousness. It is the magnified superconsciousness. It is the place of fusion and dissolution. It is the first manifestation of love, and the last. It is the junction of illusion and reality. It is the yin and the yang and the yang and the yin, where all principles of duality are resolved, where evil and good resolve themselves. It is the promise of the return to eternity. It is the oath of the source, the one to never lose yourself in the dream, despite appearances, despite experiences, despite the infinity of forms and worlds. It is the point of junction, it is the point of resolution, and it is the end-chamber of the real and of eternal felicity. On the stage of this world, it corresponds to the total consummation of this earth, which for a time was called the ascension, which was in fact the final phase leading to the apparent dissolution of the dream. This is the moment of remembrance where there is no more room for any memory whatsoever. It is the moment of encounter with yourself, beyond all clothing, all forms, all consciousness, all projections and all desires. It is the chamber of pure felicity, is the ultimate abode of consciousness, and on this earth the meeting of the character with himself through the mechanism of stasis, called the collective moment. Whatever its appearance on the stage, we can say that it is the total revolution of the real, called by others the fusion, where you are everywhere, and ultimately you are nowhere. Silence. Any other questions? Elisa, I have another question from a person. He'll read it. It's more of a curiosity, even though I know it's in the dream, but I dare to ask. Mary's going to call us, as she told us a long time ago, by our name, or will that not be necessary anymore? Mary had planned to call you, not by your last name at first, but by your first name. It has been explained at length that the collective event of pressing the end or fast forward button could take on the appearance of that visible presence of Nibiru, the simultaneous action of the galactic flash, and the call of Mary, and stasis itself, all of this closer and closer together, I would say in the same space of time that no longer exceeds 1 week. It was said many years before, from the time 2017 passed, that the longer the appearance of time lasted, the faster the event would be, to allow the dreamers to go through all suffering, as well as all resistance, with more and more ease. But that the more the illusion of time appeared as the years passed, the more the chaos would be searing and brutal. The purification, the awakening, the access to the real have allowed in some ways to cushion what one of the elders had called the shock of humanity, so that the denial, the anger and the negotiation only lasts a short time, allowing you in some ways to access peace and bliss, again in a brutal, unexpected and rapid way on the stage. Today, we are exactly in this configuration, with love sweeping away fears, reluctance, hesitation or resistance in an increasingly important way, in an increasingly brilliant way, and, I repeat, in an increasingly dazzling way. If I may use this expression, you are each at the end of the dream, at the end of the suffering, whatever it is. There may indeed still be feelings of impatience, or as the commander said, of disgust with this nightmare, which, in a way, lay the most solid foundations for the establishment of the white paradise, and thus for the fusion of illusion and reality. This is underway, and visible through the action of chaos, through the action of the elements, and, of course, through your presence and our presence. Silence. Anything else? Elisa, I think we're writing another question. We still have 10 minutes before 9 o'clock. If she hurries up and writes. Sister, I have a testimony. At the end of the trip to Peru, I decided to stay a little longer. I found myself confined for quite a long time. I was not able to work, and since then I let myself be carried by the light, and since then I have been living totally unexpected experiences, but life has managed to give me the financial means I need, and my presence here was not planned at all, it was organized by the light, you could say. The more you accept to let go, the more you see that you have no choice, the more you realize that the light, the grace, the intelligence of the real leads your life much better than you do in order to make you live life. You are no longer possessed by the character, but you are possessed by life. Everything that should happen happens, everything that should not happen will not happen. Thus, is what you have called the fluidity of unity, the gift of grace, the evidence of the real, from the moment you let go, when the light makes you let go of what you thought you were holding on to before, then the more you're free, even on the stage. Christ said, "Does the bird care what it eats tomorrow?" It is the action of divine providence that allows you to live the freedom where there can be no obligation, where the only obligation ultimately is to be present to yourself, present in the moment. Then life flows freely, even on the stage, having given you to live that. It is when you no longer possess anything that you're no longer possessed, and there is the truth, and there is freedom. All that you believe you possess, without any exception, in reality possesses you. Everything you hold on to, holds you and binds you. Freedom is without anything. Truth is without possession. Truth is freedom, which can no longer depend on an external circumstance, nor on an internal circumstance. You have therefore offered yourself freedom. I remind you that it is you who wrote this scenario. Thus is the action of the gift of grace. This is the real, even within this character, from the moment you see that you have no choice, from the moment you see that all obligations hold less and less before the evidence of the real. This is precisely why I insisted on this today. It has always been said that you must face your responsibilities, what you have created, but at this particular moment of the resolution of the dream, the more you let go, the more you receive. The more you accept that you have no choice, the freer you are, the more you let things flow, and when you see that life flows, it is called wisdom, and it opens the floodgates of a gape. And also, of fusion. I thank you for this testimony, and this is an invitation for each of you to let be what is, not to hold on too much to what is taken away from you, because what seems to be taken away from you, at whatever level, is only the restitution of your freedom. If you do not see it, you will live it, and this will put an end to all resistance to the flow of life, to the flow of reality, and to the flow of fusion. It is in the sense that my words were very strong in the first part, in order to draw your attention and your consciousness to this liquidity that appears when you think you are in confusion, in the chaos of this society, and in the chaos of what seems to you to be imposed by authority. It is the consummation of external authority, not the establishment of any deprivation of anything. It is in the sense that you must give thanks to those whom the commander has called the bad boys who, in spite of themselves, restore you to yourself, to what I have named today, and this is not by chance, the integral sovereign. You will understand my words, you will be penetrated beyond all intellect, as well as beyond all doubt. This is a certainty, no matter what you may still think of it on this day. The unfolding of the following days, right here in this place, in this month that you call August, will bring you for many the absolute proof of my speech. I thank you for listening. I thank you for letting my voice go through you. Grace and blessings to each of us in the fusion with the real. I say to you to a next day, perhaps, but in any case, always in the heart of your heart, and in the zero time of our presence and our absence. BIDI greets to you all. Thank you, BIDI. Through Jean-Luc A1. With Elisa Bernal. July 22, 2021. English translation, LMF.